I'm gonna share my screen. Hold on just a sec. Okay.
Speaking of music, did anybody else see the Elvis movie?
Yes. That was great.
Nate, Bear?
No, not me. Not yet.
Are you gonna add a prime cut, an Elvis prime cut?
I was going to say, you guys should not trust me with music. I watched the Elvis movie on January 1st and have basically not stopped listening to Elvis since. And I was never a huge fan, but the movie kind of turned me into a huge fan.
I hear you. I thought it was pretty inspiring too, actually. I'm doing the same thing with Elton John because just a short little story. So my wife CJ did some work with this guy who worked for Elton John, and basically he got us some tickets. Like he was really trying to like do her right and kind of pay her back for all the stuff she'd done for him. And so he got us like backstage tickets, and then like all that. So it turns out this guy actually is the guy that runs all of Elton John's concerts. And so we got to go to this thing and get to see like all the backstage stuff, and like got like second row tickets for. I'm not even like a big Elton John guy, but it was really cool. And the reason I'm sharing this is because Elton John, basically, over all these years, he's very loyal to the people who work for him, and so he basically is doing this farewell. This is his farewell tour, and it's been going on for like 2 years. They're like a couple hundred places that they're visiting. Like, it's incredible. And he's giving all of the proceeds to this crew who've been with him for all these years as a way of giving them a retirement package. So it's really cool, actually, very inspiring. He's just trying to take care of these folks. So
It sounds like a good example of exit to community.
yeah. Anyway, that's just sniffles. That's not me crying. So let's add a little bit of music just so that this playlist is a little bit more shared than what it is right now, which is me just throwing stuff in there. So anybody got some suggestions? You can do a couple things. I can just type them in live and add them to the playlist, or you can cut and paste it into the chat, and I can do it.
Well,
And
I can
guidelines.
start off if you want.
Yeah, do it. Go for it.
All right, I've got two of them. I've got Rush, Tom Sawyer is the song name.
Yeah, of course.
And so it's a kind of a classic for me. And then a Lupe Fiasco song called Miss Mural.
I love Lupe Fiasco too. What's it called? Miss Mural?
Yep, MS Mural, yeah. Miss Mural.
Lupe Fiasco. Okay. Well, I might have to add one more Lupe Fiasco song in there. I'll do it later. Okay. Anybody else have some additions? And the idea is just like, this is just stuff that you want to, like basically we're imprinting with this music. We'll look back in years from now and go like, oh, I remember that. So what do you want to add to the mix?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Tam. Yeah, I'll be quick. I actually took some time to try to find something because I sometimes I don't listen to music. I have like periods of time where I don't listen at all, and right now I'm in one of those. So it was kind of hard to go back and think about the song. But there are these two songs that I really liked. One called is actually it's called JPEG. JPEG by Digitalism.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
That one there. And then the other one, it's called Coffee and Fields by Satin Jackets. They are both kind of like
Okay.
That one there.
All
Kind of
right.
like electronic music, so something like that. But yeah, there it goes.
That's great. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Tam, what's your Elvis songs? Or it doesn't have to be Elvis.
Okay, well, let's put three in. Let's do Suspicious Minds, If I Can Dream, and Lonesome Tonight.
Suspicious Minds. Okay, hold on.
And that way, anyone who listens to this will be like, "Who chose those songs? Where did that come from?"
Only Tonight.
Lonesome Tonight. I think it's
Or
like
Lonesome Tonight?
Are you lonesome tonight? Yeah.
Oh, right. That's it. Lonesome Tonight. Sorry. Lonesome. Okay.
And then If I Can Dream, which is actually a song I never heard until the movie, and it's pretty fantastic.
All right. Okay, so that's cool. Thank you. Wow, we're missing a few folks. I wonder if they just didn't want to add music. I'm gonna have to give Antti some shit because it's late, and I think it's because he didn't want to add music. I think it comes down to that. I'm just joking. All right, so I think we've got some seeds here. Now we're gonna mess with the algorithm, so it's not just my taste that's influencing it. We'll see what the other recommendations are that they come up, and then we'll just add some more over time. All right, cool. Thank you. That didn't take that long and fun. All right, so let's do some updates. I will start. I've been meaning to post the strategic framework up on the forum, but I'm a little bit stuck right now because in it refers to integrating with the academy as like a economic integration, and so we're syncing like this week with Angela on like how do we talk about this partnership, so I'm kind of in this weird land of like figuring out how to describe this. So that's what's delaying this right now, and I'm hoping that I'll be through this because Angela's going to be talking about some of this next week with the academy. So it's like we're kind of at a place where we need to be able to describe this publicly what we're talking about. So that's I mean it's good. It's a little bit I wouldn't say frustrating because it's kind of my own creation. This current situation at least, but we'll break through it. And but otherwise, really good progress happening on the academy side of things, yeah, I'll just stop there. I've been doing some thinking about we're going to get into this today, but like what our priorities could be for the next funding season. So we'll talk about that. Bear, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, from my side, I've started working on the project of the review periods. I'm trying still to kind of like finalize the scope of it and really be able to say how much can we get done for February, and then the rest leave it for following months. But I think there's been a lot of progress. Probably next call I will share some of that progress with everyone. One of those things it's gonna be this sort of like document. I still don't know exactly how to call it, but some sort of manifesto or something that states the responsibilities that someone takes when becomes a coordinator, and that really adheres to that and really follows that those principles and those guidelines that we agreed on. The idea would be also to be able to sign it as a coordinator. So there's that, and then I've also started working on in this type of evaluation process with the different bits and pieces that I'm thinking it should have. I'm trying to build it like the most all around possible, the most kind of like I don't know if holistic is the way, but it should be, it will have like self-assessment section where the contributor or the coordinator assess themselves and their work. Another part of a contributor evaluation where anyone in the team can evaluate other like peer in the team. And a third section where we compare like the current accountabilities and tasks that could be like stated on their roles or like on the definition of the projects themselves to the actual work that the people did. So we can compare that more like with actual results, with metrics, with more kind of like facts. And yeah, a couple of other things, but that's kind of like the big vision for this evaluation process, that we could have at least something to try on for February. But yeah, I will be sharing more detail on this pretty soon. And yeah, I don't know, I'll pass it back to you, Gideon, or to Nate.
Yeah, Nate, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, yeah. So my update is centered around, of course, the SPI. I just posted on the forum kind of a brief overview. Hopefully it gets read by the community and has a good reception. Outside of that, I had several meetings with Joseph, who's been helping me with this SPI. And so we're developing a roadmap currently, and we will finalize that roadmap next week. And then we have separated two kind of initiatives to think about. I introduced Joseph to Mert with the inverter network work. And so he is thinking about ways of how to connect researchers and research needs within the TE community, and using the proposal inverter as they finalize their development of that product, which is really interesting. And then, of course, the curation service we talked about yesterday and how to integrate that. Right now, the biggest focus is actually kind of something that I didn't really anticipate, was the fact that it's looking around to these different communities, finding a bunch of different research groups and a bunch of different interest groups, which is great, but not really finding the incentive to create new ones within the TEC. And so trying to figure out ways for people to get interested or start interest groups of their own. But yeah, cataloging the current existing research groups that exist, and working on a plan to onboard them here in the near future. So everything is got good momentum right now, but I think there might be a couple obstacles here and there along the way, but try to keep everybody up to date on that too. So I'll back to you, Kino.
Great, thank you. Hey, NT. Tam, do you want to just give a quick update on what's happening with just the thinking about the outreach, or not outreach, the talking with advisors?
Yes, just finding the mute button here. So I think we agreed that I would be able to present something to this internal team for advice process first on a Tuesday call. Maybe I shared something. I believe I shared it with Gideon already, and NT or Bear. I shared it with Bear, right? Yeah. Just to sort of start thinking around what the team of advisors could look like, maybe even brainstorming people to start reaching out to. And some of the things that, the goals, specifically the goals would be for the TEC to benefit from it's nothing that we haven't talked about before, for the TEC to benefit from the advice and experience of others in the token engineering discipline and subject matter experts from which we could use like strategic advice about specific topics, treasury management or token supply price, discovery mechanisms, Even something like what would happen if we turn off the bonding curve, it's people that can really advise us specifically on these kinds of things. And also, and I think this is almost more importantly, is like reaching outside of the TEC. And, we spend a lot of time talking amongst ourselves and sometime in the community, but it's really to put our tentacles further out in the TEC and to sort of have some connection, some link with other people, other stakeholders really in token engineering. And, it's to create this link for them to advise us, but also to act as our advocates and to advocate for what we're doing here, to be aware of what we're doing here, and then to advocate for what we're doing here. So I think it's a pretty simple. I think it's pretty simple. I think the thing is reaching out. I think the next steps I'll share it now is it's reaching out and getting soft, hey, is this something that people would even be interested in? I don't know that it needs to be a nomination process. I don't think this needs to be a vote. I think it's sort of reaching out to a few people, asking if they'd even be interested, and then having this group maybe decide on, hey, what are the things that we need? Who are the people that'd be good to have this this discussion with? And then even to part of the shaping of this advisory team would be to ask them about time commitments, to ask them about structure of the call. So in even reaching out to them, we're going to be doing advice process about cadence and forum and, what is a reasonable expectation from this kind of advisory group. That's really it. Maybe anyone has any questions or thoughts about it?
I would recommend that we still talk about it on a Tuesday call with the slightly bigger group too, because I think it's worth getting some more feedback. What do you think? Should we do that this coming Tuesday, Tam?
Oh yeah, I think we can do that for sure.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. I'll put that on.
It's really actually a very simple idea. And yeah. I think it's just the thing with this particular piece is long runway, So if we get agreement even now, we probably will start in April. Or, it'd be some miracle to start in March with East Denver and all of the other things that are happening in March. I would imagine even if we started to coalesce around support for this idea and reach out and get some soft commitments from people that we think would be strategic advisors, even if we did that next week and by the end of next week, we're still looking at April as really having that first meeting.
Yeah. Well, we can take time in this call. I'm just doing quick updates right now, but we can take time in this call, or we can do it next Tuesday. What would you prefer? I mean, just for additional feedback, if that's what you're looking for.
No, I think I definitely defer to you. Which one and the people on this call? Yeah.
Let's do it Tuesday. That way, if Griff is there and if we've got, I don't know if Olivia will be there, but let's do it next Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, Tam. NT, would you like to go? We're just doing updates. And then also, we're going to get some music from you too, my friend. And also, Marathon Mind, we'd like to get some music from you too and an update.
Sure. Well, the updates, I guess most importantly, I'm working on a more on a document, on a report for the grants that sort of explains more my reasoning and sort of outlines what I believe to be the best way to go about it, so that hopefully I can present it next week or somewhere around that, have some feedback, and then start working towards that, whether it's started getting documentation or out the processes, whatever it is. Then I also have to chat with Marathon Mind about the creation service superior role. He seems to have a few questions, and I guess we can think about it as a handover. And let me see if there's something else. I don't think there's anything else. There's the proposal by Curious Rabbit, which now they're going to talk with. He's going to talk with Jeff and Rex. And someone reached out to me about a potential sort of. It's more like a partnership proposal. It's not necessarily funding, which would be interesting to explore and to talk about. But I'll share more once I have more information as well.
Okay, sorry, just taking notes there. And Marathon Mind, I think I saw you say that you are not going to be able to speak. Is that true? Can you just like flash? If you can speak, please go ahead. If not, we'll understand. Okay, I'm going to take that as a sign that you cannot speak right now. So, all right. Trying to think, there was one other thing I was going to popped up as a result of this. All right, can't remember. Okay, let us move on. So, I had two things that I wanted to cover today, and let me just see if there's anything else that other people would like to cover while we're here today. So, basically, I don't know how to explain this in simple terms, but as we implement this strategy that's in that strategic framework, which is basically prioritizing the education side of things for this next year or so. What does that mean for the TEC server and the TEC discourse, our forum? What does it mean for our community? So that's like, what does it look like when you come visit us? So I wanted to just talk about that because I think that's going to be really important that we have a plan for that. And then the other thing was the new funding proposal for the next season, which basically, we need to get done in the next couple of weeks so that we have time in March for it to go up and basically get funded before the end of March when our current funds run out. So those are the two things I had. Anybody have other things you'd like to discuss today?
Excuse me, because I'm chewing pizza. But I would like to bring up the potential for requesting a small grant from ENS. I have some ideas.
Do you mean
One
yeah, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
So maybe should I take 2 minutes and describe more, or just add that to agenda for later?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Why don't you just jump right into it?
Sure. So I had a catch up with Eduardo this week, which is really great because he and I really haven't had a chance to have a one-on-one for a very, very long time. And it's always nice to hang out with Eduardo. And he sort of shared with me that he's now one of the stewards in the ENS. And specifically, he's one of the stewards on the Public Goods Working Group. So the Public Goods Working Group, I can find the link and share it here. The Public Goods Working Group has some grants that they will have this year to support public goods. And I thought it could be very interesting for the TEC to make a request. I'm going to drop in our chat the link to the forum page. There's something between 500,000 and 600,000 in different grants, small grants, large grants, discretionary. And we would need to, right after, in fact, I have to leave at 7 p.m. to join the Public Goods Group working call. If anyone would like to join with me, you're very welcome. And the process would be to sort of join that call and then submit a proposal for one of these fundings. Now, I have something in mind for Common Stack. And I'd like to just throw this idea out here. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea, but there's something very compelling about, I know I don't think it's going to be one of our top priorities in terms of doing it, but the way that we could use quadratic funding for a grant, I mean, that's token engineering, like use quadratic matching in order to fund public goods in token engineering could be a very compelling use case for a small grant. So maybe we could request a small grant to set that work up, to have some coordinator work on that, but also to then be the matching for public goods and token engineering. It seems to be a nice idea, and I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
In particular, I would love NT's perspective and thoughts about it, because I know you are really owning how we approach grants in the TEC. So I certainly want to know what you think about that.
Sounds perfect. Oh, I guess so what you're saying is that we would apply for a grant so that the money, so like we would use the money of the grant to be distributed through quadratic funding for TE projects, right?
Yes, and possibly any of the other work that needs to happen to set that up. I'm not fully aware of the scope of what needs to happen in order to set that up. So potentially the setting it up plus the matching grant portion.
Okay, yeah, I mean, perfect. I think we would have to. Well, honestly, I do think that we can even have it as a relatively top priority, because if we are planning to do this anyways and we have the chance to do it, maybe it's worth try to do it now that we have the opportunity. I guess it sounds good.
So, yeah, so one of the big things that, one of the big challenges I think we're going to face this year is that the partnership with the academy. I think that a lot of the fundraising energy for the TEC is probably going to need to focus on that. So I'm thinking that there may be a way to combine these things, like, and Auntie and I were talking about this a little bit, and I was talking with Griff about this also yesterday, which is maybe using, actually it'd be kind of cool to think about combining these two things, but basically using money like the ENS grants as a matching pool that we can then go out and raise funds against. So just like nonprofits do, they basically secure a bunch of, they might get like a couple $100,000 from like major donors and foundations and use that as a matching pool, and then go out to individual donors or contributors and say, hey, when you contribute between now and blah, you get a XXX, match. So I don't know, you have to think about that a little bit. Like maybe there's a way to combine these things. That's not exactly, matching is not quadratic funding, but quadratic funding can be used to do matching. So there's some connection here for sure. I'm talking with Eduardo tomorrow also. We have like a monthly connection that we do sometimes, so I can find out a little bit more, but yeah, maybe brainstorm with him. Also, it looks like Griff is a major token holder in ENS, and I see that he's voting pretty regularly there, so that's good too.
Yeah, maybe the one thing I want to say is this funding is coming through right now. And so a little bit you snooze, you lose might apply here. So if we are interested in pursuing this, we probably want to formulate the proposal relatively quickly. Rather than, if I have a feeling if we say, oh, we'll do this in March, we may not be able we may lose that. It may be a missed opportunity by then. I'm not sure, but it's conceivable that there will be some very compelling proposals submitted early on.
Do you have any insight on how they distribute grants within ENS?
Yeah, Eduardo said it's at the discretion of the stewards. There are 3 stewards in the public goods working group, so it's not necessarily a vote that goes to the entire community and the delegates. But I'm sure they have a very high bar for their criteria. Is that your question, Nate?
Yeah, and I was just curious because is this something that perhaps like even the curation service team could kind of utilize to apply for?
Do you think it would fall under a public good?
I do, yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I think possibly, but I think as TEC, maybe we act
Under one.
strategically. Yeah, I mean, we could decide which one. I'm throwing that idea out there because I think it's a very compelling use case.
Yeah.
We directly support public goods and token engineering. They have some sort of matching. We use quadratic funding in order to do the matching. So I think it's a very compelling use case that is an easier sell and would, yeah, but I just want to throw that out there.
I just like I still kind of perceive the curation service being developed by a completely separate team than the TEC, but maybe Gideon or NT has kind of an insight on that.
We can probably just forward information to them and see if they can find a way to get something in there. But like you said, it's completely different. In like we can probably do both. They apply for themselves, and we find a way to apply it ourselves.
Yeah, it was just and because I know exactly how the relationship with Algevra is going and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to support that initiative as much as possible. And so yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you, Tam. I'm gonna talk with Eduardo tomorrow just to see if I can get any more insight on the like how the urgency of it. Then let's let that guide our next steps. Yeah, there's not a lot of big pools of funding like this going on, so like it would be pretty bad to miss it. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to add to the?
Maybe I just ask, NT, are you the best person to ask about, or maybe Griff is the right person to ask, or maybe both of you, about what would be the prerequisites, the requirements in order to actually launch a Gitcoin QF round for token engineering? I'm assuming it's not something that's like, oh, we can just set it up tomorrow. I'm assuming there's probably maybe some process work to do, perhaps some technical work to do.
Yeah, I guess at least now Griff would be more appropriate because I think as far as I know, he's in touch with them, and so he probably knows which things they would need from us to work on that. But then once we have that, we can figure out from me or us as a team how to deal with whatever requisite they have.
So Griff is talking with Colin from Gitcoin tomorrow, from the Grants Protocol tomorrow. And so one of the action items, he's going to actually he's going to try to get Colin to connect with NT. Griff's understanding is that like right now there's a window that, over the next couple months, their team has a couple of slots left that they could work with partners, just like a couple of partners. And Griff is like, I think this is a good opportunity because if we move now, they would end up doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us, including like integrating with Gnosis Chain, which, we would want that help if we were going to do it. So like doing it now there's some advantages to doing it in the short term. We might not get that kind of support in 3 months from now, because by then they'll have the documentation and stuff like that. So anyway, that is moving right now. We'll see whether Colin takes Griff up on this suggestion. So I'm really excited about this, by the way. Like, I think this is like a huge thing. We'll talk a little bit more about this later today. Okay, so all right, let's get into maybe actually let's reverse the order and talk about the new funding proposal while you're here still, Tam, and then we can get into then we can get into the topic of like what we want this place to be like over this next year as we focus on education and things that are not necessarily about community building on our servers. So I'll share just some thinking I had, and then I'd love to get feedback on this. So the idea is like for our next funding season, I'm thinking that what we should be doing is thinking of this in terms of trimesters. So this would be April, May, June, and July that we would be seeking funds for. And so, if you look at our current run rate, which is about 10,000 DAI a month, that's what we would be applying for, is like 40,000 DAI. We might increase it a tiny bit, but like I think part of the story here is we're trying to like bring our costs in line. So I think one of the things, so I was thinking about like, what are the things that we're really trying to do right now? And the thing that kept coming back to me is like restoring faith in the commons. When we started, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and then over the last, with the bear market and then with kind of all the changes that happened from like the summer on, it's been, and the sense that the TEC has spent a lot of money over this last year. I think there's this opportunity right now to revitalize people's faith in the commons and get people excited again. And that's going to be like really important for us to go out and get the funding that we need to keep this moving and building for the future, but also like getting people involved, like in terms of contributing their time. There are a lot of people out there who I think are kind of sitting on the sidelines right now. I've been having some conversations with folks, and they're ready to come back in. They just are kind of like waiting for things to settle and see where the TEC goes. So I've been actually pretty encouraged by some of the conversations I've been having over the last couple of weeks. And I think it's up to us to just get people excited again. So I was just thinking that actually would be, I'm not sure we would frame it that way, but it's like, what are the things that we continue to do? Well, one, we've already done this first thing, which is basically bringing operational costs in line, pretty dramatically shrinking the cost of operations. And then I think the other thing is it's real important that we get back to doing the grant making. So like that was one of the core premises that the Commons was funded on, was launched on, was that doing grant making. And over the last several months, we haven't been doing as much of that, although we did do some like very significant grants for the Academy. So I think the work that NT is doing, it's not only good to just be doing public goods funding, but I think it also helps to restore faith in the TEC. And then the other piece of this, what I'm trying to do here is build synergy so that we can tell a simple story. And so part of that public goods funding is like, we're going to be directing a lot of that at education, token engineering education, and in particular the academy. So this partnership that we're building with the academy is a big part of that, helping to make sure that the academy, the ability to public goods, token engineering education is stable and sustainable over time. So that's part of that story. And then the other piece of it is basically telling the TEC story and doing some fundraising with that. So I think that's kind of in the bailiwick of like restoring faith and excitement in the commons. And then the second one, and this is, this, I don't know how you all feel about this, but I think it's like, we've got the first common pool resource for the TEC, which is money. We've got a common pool, and so we're basically reinvesting in that. And then, but there's this opportunity to start working on the second common pool resource, which is knowledge. And so I think so if we're looking for like big wrappers for describing work, that's another big, that's one I think that we're actually making some progress on that front with the curation service and with the potential that has with Algovera, and also in particular with the Shelling Point Initiative, like basically having Shelling Point Initiative be a little bit about that, like building knowledge and sharing knowledge around very specific domains that are within the token engineering. So that's that one. And then the last one is, it's really clear to me that this team by itself cannot do all the work that needs to be done. So we've done a lot of good work with like cleaning up our process and just like the coordination process, things like that. And I think that the next step is really, how do we open things up so that we have systems in place to be able to take in contributions, volunteer contributions, volunteer engagement at like a larger scale. So there are some examples of that, but a lot of it is like permissionless self-service services. So like think curation service, where like we don't have to do a ton of work, just there, and people can serve themselves. But then, when it comes to like more intensive types of volunteer engagement, what does that look like? Okay, so that's a lot of me just talking. I want to open it up, get thoughts from folks on these themes. Do these themes make sense? Are there other ones we should be thinking about? And then also the implications of like are we missing some big goals, some specific things that we should be thinking about in terms of our work for the next 4 months?
I think it looks really good. One of the things that I really think that should be a big part of this is kind of under that same framework of bringing the token engineering community closer together in terms of forming associations, getting kind of these common communication channels between similar types of projects and similar types of organizations that are doing kind of similar work that should be collaborating with each other. I think just trying to figure out how to do that is kind of a huge priority for token engineering, something that can really help with a lot of projects that are currently in existence right now. So yeah, I think just kind of building that network of token engineers is a big part of it. I think a lot of the projects that are in token engineering right now are strictly focused on what they're doing, and that's fine. That's something that they have to do, but it'd be good for us to really focus on trying to connect them a lot better.
I really like that. Yeah, weaving the network. That's kind of a nice theme. How about other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I also like it. The way you're describing it, like the narrative. I think it's a good way to approach it. Yeah, I don't really have much to say right now. I really share a lot this idea of like the permissionless contributions. I do think that should be part of the next step and a big focus to take on to the next season. Yeah, I don't know. Right now, I cannot think about any other ideas or goals that we would be missing. Maybe something to throw in there would be this this idea of how to explain it. Should we assume that for those 4 months that the coordination team is going to remain the same in terms of like people, in terms of individuals, or should we think about, I don't know, I think Marathon Man left, but Marathon Man or Joseph or I don't know, even maybe Tam, she wants to take a more formalized role in the team, or I don't know, other people that might want to start participating in it in a more active way. I guess that'd be the word. Yeah, I guess that'd be something to think about.
I think it might be interesting to have, rather than have to formalize in the proposal that we submit now, names and roles, to also include something that is still a little gray, like for, I used to call it special projects in the budget for the stewards, but something like if we have a piece of work and a resource who can execute it well, we can have a bounty for that piece of work. In ENS grants, they call it discretionary funds. So I don't know what we need. I'm not attached to any word, but some additional funding for pieces of work that don't have someone to execute it yet. And then the other thing that I see that's not in here is the stakeholder project, but maybe that's because it's separate funding. It's a separate proposal. Is that why we are not including it in this more, I guess, overall TEC proposal for funding?
No, that's just an oversight. I should add that in. I think there is some question still about how involved this team will be, and so but it definitely needs to be coordinated with the other stuff that's going on. So I'll definitely add that.
Right now, also it came to my mind. I don't really know what's the status or if there's any work being done on that front, but we've had this conversation about the reputation system of people like in Givet and other places that are starting to work on that. Personally, I still do believe it's something that really excites me, and I feel that it's something that could really help us as a community, especially in this new stage of scaling it to have more people getting involved. I think figuring that out and having something to start with, I think that'd be pretty cool. I don't know if it would be enough time. I don't really know how complex it is to have something in place like that, but I that's something I've been thinking a lot about, because I see a lot of connections with the processes and the roles and the different entry level positions that we could have in the community. So yeah, I don't know. I think that could be a really interesting piece to play with.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's also, I think that in a world where we don't have a lot of money to throw around, throwing around reputation helping people to build reputation, especially people who are maybe just graduating from the academy, is great, man. It's like, it's a great opportunity. So that is kind of a superpower that we could have, but we don't have. Also, Nate, I think there may be some connection here with the voting systems thing. There's a lot of, there's been a lot of like kind of low-key debate about, would a reputation token undermine the TEC token utility, and then also like how specifically the voting systems, like how would that impact voting? And I think that this is a super important area. And there's been some progress that the Trace folks have made on that reputation tokens.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially in terms of getting experts and people who are more, almost having kind of a different weight distributions for different types of expertise when it comes to certain decision makings, and making voting systems a little bit more modular in terms of how we approach decision making and better outcomes. So I think that's one of the things that we could definitely explore. But yeah, the reputation system long term, I think, is really positive, not only just for the TEC but for the entire TE community, to kind of have and TEA has kind of started that with their profile with the soulbound tokens that Inti showed me, where you have kind of this profile of your basically your CV, your resume, of just saying, hey, here's some skill sets that I have, and here's the courses that I've taken, here's all the things that I've participated in, and extending that to kind of research groups and interest groups and things that you've actively done within the TE community, and having a profile that you can display to others to kind of build trust, to kind of build up your reputation, and have this thing that you can kind of port along with you. I think is really important to develop for the future. But yeah.
Yeah, if you think about, again, like what are the common pool resources that we're trying to build for the field itself, not just for the TC, but if you think about the network of people, and then you think about the knowledge network, like the knowledge graph of topics, and then the intersection of that, like there's lots of different aspects of the intersect of those lines that connect those nodes. But one of them is like, what's the reputation of this person on this topic? Super important opportunity. It could definitely be something that the TEC facilitates and hosts. So, okay, I think this is a topic that we need to come back to and discuss a little bit more. The rest of these things, we kind of know what we need to do, for the most part.
Since there's a lull in the conversation, I'll say thanks. This was a great call, and I'm gonna head.
Okay. Thanks for coming, Tam.
Okay.
All right. See
Thanks,
you.
Tam.
Bye. All right. So I'm going to take this moment to just, should I throw this out? I have this crazy idea. I'm not going to take more than 2 minutes to explain. I want to dive into the rest of this stuff, but since we're talking about reputation, since we're talking about voting systems, we're talking about engagement. One of the things that I just can't get out of my head is how do we effectively balance the different types of capital that the TEC is going to have. in terms of like our governance. So what do I mean by that? I mean, there's financial capital. So like right now, our current token is all about financial capital, right? That's what it represents. You can think of it like a liquidity way. That's the primary function of it. There's also, we have praise, right? So what is praise? Well, praise is like, is this person good to work with? That's kind of like the way I see it. Are they a good contributor? Are they things that are, I mean, there are like lots of different interpretations of it, but in a way, you can think of that as like the labor aspect of people's contributions. So there's the money aspect, financial aspect, there's the labor aspect or work aspect. And then I think there's one more piece, which is the expertise aspect, which is kind of what we're getting at. And that takes a couple different forms. I won't go into all the details of it, but basically there's one version of it with attestation. I passed this test. And then the other is like, from people who know a lot about bonding curves, if somebody who knows a lot about bonding curves said, oh, Gideon knows a lot about bonding curves, that should mean something, right? It's not the case. Saying as an example. So one of the things that I'm very curious about for the commons longer term is how might we construct a system where it's not just like how much money you have that determines governance, but like how much you've contributed of your kind of like putting your heart into this work, your passion for this mission, and then also your expertise. And the thing I'll throw out there, this goes into the category of crazy ideas, untested ideas, but I keep thinking about an index. That like, what if the TEC was not a token, but was actually an index, kind of like the way water works, the water index, which is made up of like, it's essentially an index of several different tokens. And what if there's a reputation token, like an expertise token, a contribution token, which is praise, liquidity. Like, what would that look like if that were the new TEC token? It was actually an index rather than. Might that be a way for us to kind of like allow the market to balance off our needs, in a time when expertise is really dry, we're not attracting a lot of experts, then that portion of the index becomes much more valuable relative to other people. And so it would automatically self-correct. Anyway, I just throw that out in the crazy idea category, something to think about. But longer term, I think there's some in that space. And in the short term, I do think that reputation is something that, like we've got the other pieces, but the piece that's really missing is reputation. And actually the Academy is doing some work on that. I think this idea of like somebody who knows a lot about a topic saying that somebody else also knows a lot. That's another aspect of reputation that we're missing. Very important. Okay, I'll be quiet for a sec. I would love to just hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's that is a worthy pursuit. I think that the reputation aspect is a little difficult, especially from the technical component side of things, and it's something that will be developed kind of iteratively over time. But for me, I think there's like two aspects of it. There's the kind of reputation and the individual approach towards how we represent their voting power and their decision-making power. And then the other aspect is how do we present certain decisions to the right people? And so thinking about that, it's like, having certain types of decisions, whether, if it's community-wide, of course, it will go to the TEC token holders if it impacts everybody in the TEC. But if it's kind of a technical, non-funding question, I think having kind of these like modular like instances of voting systems where we have a voting system for each type of decision that's being made within the TEC, to have it go to the right place and to the right people who are going to decide on whether something moves forward or it's tangible, or if it's something that can be done. And so having more voting instances and voting systems, like a plurality of voting systems that is available, is really interesting to me. But I do think reputation is really interesting. The index part, I'm just wrapping my head around it, and it is a pretty cool idea. I'm not really sure how it would work in terms of distribution of the TEC token, but I think it's really neat. I'd have to think about it more.
Yeah, it's out there. Other thoughts from folks before we move on to the next section?
Yeah, well, in regards with the index, yeah, similar to Nate, I think it's a really cool idea, and but like especially for me that I'm really far from being an expert about tokens or token engineering. I don't really know how would that work, but like in terms of the theory, it sounds pretty cool. And in terms of the reputation system, it's kind of like a similar thing. I don't know, like I feel because I'm missing this technical part in terms of tokenomics and token engineering, I probably don't have like the full picture of how things work and how things can be implemented. But from my point of view, I don't know, sometimes I just try to think about a simple way in which we could start like some sort of like reputation dynamic between a group of people. And I don't know, I think that sometimes, for example, tools like, again, like Coordinate, or even Praise again, but maybe just like one of the things that I was thinking is that what would happen if Praise, instead of allocating TEC tokens, would only allocate a kind of like a fake token with no economic value, and just like something symbolic in a way. And the much you have, that means the much reputation you have, right? Because people are praising you for certain things you're doing, and you are just accumulating these points, let's call them. And there's this kind of like a graph or whatever where you can see how many points each person has, and that's it. Maybe it's not perfect, maybe it's not like something really reliable, but maybe it's kind of like what Nate was saying. I think the whole reputation system idea, it will be like a work in progress for the long term, while we try to fully figure it out. But maybe it could be like a pretty simple step that, I don't know, could be implemented and see how it works, and just like iterate with it, like similar with Coordinate, and that's actually one of the ideas that I have, that I would like to include in all of these kind of like review periods that I've been talking about. I would like to use this tool, especially for the tool that it has, or the feature that it has, of visualizing, of having like a visual graph of how people are allocating the tokens with the tool between the group itself. And instead of using that for allocating compensation or money, what I'm trying to do is to just use it as a tool to look at impact, and to look at what people are valuing others' contributions. So I feel there's this connection between that and between reputation that I think could keep being explored. And again, from my point of view, that it's non-technical completely, I think that there would be some interesting options to pursue over there.
And since we're talking about kind of the ideas around reputation, I had one a while back around the distribution of tokens that Bear is talking about. Kind of just has no monetary value, but is significant for building reputation. But the the way it would work is that you'd have people who already have a significant reputation within the token engineering field. So take somebody like Trent and have them become distributors of reputation. And so these people have already gotten, they have their career that's kind of set. They are token engineering experts, but they can recognize other token engineering expertise and distribute these types of reputation tokens to people that they think are proficient in their field, and have them have this kind of large group of distributors who are already have an established reputation to manage that distribution, and start having kind of growing the network from there. But yeah, just while we're on the topic of it.
Yeah, I have to say that, this kind of gets to this whole thing about praise on Twitter. I there's a part of me, I love the idea, and there's a part of me that's like, yeah, but what would people be praising? Would they be praising, hey, great job, the work you did in TEC? That's not that interesting for Twitter, but something like that, where you do have somebody who's like recognized, almost think of it like a snowball survey. Snowball surveys are like, you say, we've got to interview like this network of people. So we're going to start with these 10. We're going to ask them questions. Then we're going to ask at the end, who are the next 10 people we should talk to? So you kind of snowball out. So that's kind of in effect what that would be. And like using that as a way, maybe starting generally as like, in the field of token engineering, who do you respect most? Or I don't know what the phrase would be, but like just keep it very high level. And then over time, figure out ways to make it increasingly granular around like specific subdomains within the field. I think that there's something there, and that's different from an attestation, which is I passed this test. They're both needed. I was talking with Michael Zargam about this last week. Like the attestation, like I passed this test, is kind of like a beginning level of reputation, but then the more advanced one has to come from basically qualitative assessments for already considered experts. And figuring that out, if the TEC could help fund that, it would be really. Welcome, Oxiris. This is a meeting of the coordination team for the Token Engineering Commons. If you'd like to say hi, please feel free to yourself and say hi. And you can also just observe if you feel more comfortable doing that. But welcome. Okay, so any other thoughts on this before? I think basically what we've identified is that there is something here around reputation that is worth exploring. There's like things that are popping around this right now. I'm just carving that out as something that we talk a little about, and figure out how, if there's a way to start trying to tackle it next season.
This is going to be a bit of a hot take, but I do have a bit of an issue with the reputation systems, and us being the commons for token engineering.
Sorry, hey, NT, your audio is kind of like coming in and out. At least for me. Are other people have?
Yeah, it's a bit choppy.
It's better now. I just moved a bit.
Yeah, it's better.
Keep talking. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, a bit of a hot take, but I don't think we should, or I mean, we of course can look into it, right? But I think we have to be especially careful with reputation, especially ourselves. Also being the tech engineering commons, and for example, looking at praise data and things like that, I don't think praise has been or is the best tool for distributing anything in the TEC. I guess we can talk more about that in another time, but I think probably instead of reputation systems, we could look at some sort of remuneration, or I don't know how to call them, but some systems that they can register contributions, and then once we are really ready to have a proper reputation system, and with all that it entails, then we could probably port those things from the other system to this reputation system. So, for example, I know there's projects. I think some open source projects that use POAPs, that if you contributed from in this season, you get a POAP, and then you just have to take that POAP and give it a score of reputation if you want to port all that data to reputation system. But reputation is usually fixed, and um, unlike with monetary tokens, you sort of expect them to be moved around, and people sell them, buy them, etc. Reputation, if you don't get it right, it can be dangerous, because you know you can move it and you cannot sell it. So if it's not built right, it's you have to deal with that as it is.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this reputation is a super complex topic. The folks at Colony have dug into this very, very deep and built something pretty complicated. I don't know how well it works, but I know there are a lot of people who are thinking pretty deeply about reputation. So, yeah, for us to just kind of try to do it on the fly, ill-advised. And I think what we're kind of hearing from everybody is like, yeah, how do you start simply? And I think also it's like, how do we really separate out the various components of reputation? Reputation is many things. Is this person good to work with? Does this person know what they're talking about? There's lots of different components. So, okay, well, but NT, that's good counsel. That it does. These are soul bound, so they don't go away very easily. Okay, I'm just taking the last notes here. Okay, all right, let's get into the next topic, which is all right. This is a question of what we want this community to feel like over this next year or two, when a lot of our focus is going to be kind of more behind the scenes, investing in, like, the field itself, investing in the Token Engineering Academy, and helping to build up their systems as we focus on education as the first major investment area for the Commons. So what does that mean for, the TEC servers, our Discord server, but also like when you go into our forum? I think it would be a huge mistake to let those just go fallow while we're doing this other work, right? There has to be this sense that this place is still thriving and still very active, even as we're doing stuff that is kind of more below the radar and about community building, like we did a year ago, where we were really trying to build a huge community. Now we're being a lot more strategic about who we're trying to connect with, and a lot of our work is kind of behind the scenes. It's not just supporting our Discord server. So that's the premise, and I'm gonna before we dive into all this, I want to just like start with that premise. is that a decent premise that we should be starting with? Should, is that, yeah, I'd love to hear people's thoughts on just that kind of that basic idea.
Yeah, I think so. I think that kind of just really focusing on creating utility for token engineers and the token engineering community is like the biggest priority. In terms of maintaining, the environment that we once had, or like building up, maintaining like engagement on our Discord server. I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult than before. Do I think it's a priority? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I think that we're going to do our best to try to have like this, for example, the research and interest groups being built in the TEC Discord, and we're going to encourage that. But in terms of priorities of like what we should be trying to accomplish, I think just creating utility for token engineers in the field. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, for me, I think it should be. I don't think, at least not in the short term, we're gonna go back to the same sort of levels of activity that we have in the past, and I think that's okay. I really think so, because I think that gives us some time to be able to really take our time in designing more of the experience that people will go through when they visit, for example, the Discord or the forum, and to really take the time to make sure that we have everything covered, that it's simple but really easy to understand as well, and that we can make sure that when people visit us, they can find information easily, they can be redirected to the research or to the interest groups pretty easily, that they can find information available of what they need to pretty easily. So really take care of more on the experience of people when they visit us or when they visit these platforms, than trying to kind of like expand it or grow it in terms of like features or more people. Just keep it really simple, keep it really minimal, aligned with the strategy, aligned with this utility for token engineers, with the education aspect of things, but that it's also not like forgotten, right? That our website is clean, that it's easy to understand, all of these different touch points that we have for people, because I see myself reflected on that journey, right? When I visited the TC, it was kind of confusing to see what was going on and to learn what was it all about. So we can really try to fix that and realign it to the new purposes that we're pursuing. I think that would be a really good use of our time and our resources. And I don't think it should be that much of a work. I think it's just like clarifying things, simplifying things, and trying to make a good experience for people.
Right. NT, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think I'm let me see how can I say this. I guess I'm not. I don't think it's even that important. So like I think the things we are working on, if the things we are working on are explicitly, like, we are explicitly working on them because they well, we suppose that they're going to provide significant value, and so I think that is going to reflect on on the server, the forum, whatever it is. And so I guess we just have to keep doing what we're doing, keep focusing on the things that will provide value to the ecosystem. And if we and this place is going to be a reflection of our work. So if we want to build more community around us, then we have to be offering, we have to be the ones to offer something first. And so I guess I believe with, for example, with the SPI, people will have some incentive to spend some time in here, especially with those groups that may have more senior people with more experience hanging out there. So people will have some motivation to spend time here and learn from them, and also potentially, I guess, even the more serious groups um, could be considered, could consider them to be included on even curriculums, resumes, something like that. There's not going to be like a lot of people, but but it's more the quality of those people. Like, it's probably going to attract people with really nice interests and with great backgrounds, and people that that's just great to be connected with. And then the grants as well. The grants program, I believe, it's going to offload a lot of the work from the coordination team to the community that's going to come up with ideas, and that's going to be funded to work on stuff that provide value to the community. And I would expect a lot of those things to also attract people to the server. So like, in many ways, right? So maybe there's proposals that come in that are specifically targeted at building community, or just in general, because if there's, I don't know, proposals that are a bit contentious, or just nice proposals that people are excited about, people will for sure come to the server and try to promote them and get people to vote on them, or however it is. But yeah, I just think that I guess the community is a byproduct of what we're doing, and we have to. That's the focus. I don't know.
Okay.
And I guess I have to ask this, Gideon. I've always been a firm believer of like reducing, or like kind of just like minimizing the organizational identity of the TEC, but that doesn't mean that we're not on the forefront of the minds of token engineers. Like the branding of what TEC is as a place where you just like, this is where you go to if you need something TE related, and having that type of network. But like I guess I'm kind of confused at like the what the goal would be in terms of like how you see the community here within the TEC organization aspect of it. Because like if I look at the forum and stuff, yeah, it's good to have that forum, but I don't think it needs to be the focal point. Like I think that one of the things that's would be interesting is that we host a bunch of different forums on a bunch of different topics, and have people aggregate around those things rather than the internal activities of the TEC. But yeah, I guess my question is just kind of clarity around what your thoughts are on terms of like what you think the community feel should be like.
Yeah. And Osiris, I'll definitely answer. I want to give you space too. Do you have anything you'd like to add, or thoughts or questions you have since you're coming to the TC? And you can also feel free to type them in our chat if you feel more comfortable doing that. So I will respond to next question. I think that the TC fell into a trap about a year ago. And that trap was that we thought we were an organization. and we kind of fused our identity with an organization and its Discord server. So like we kind of thought of the TEC as our, and that all the Discord and the forum, and the success was like how many people we could bring in, how much we could grow that community, how welcome people felt, like how big our calls were, that kind of. And the reality is that actually what this place is a commons, like a commons that basically helps the field of token engineering steward its control and ownership over these common, the common pool resources. So right now we just have basically one common pool resource, which is money that raised as a community. And so we're now focusing on revitalizing that. And the problem is that revitalize that. That's, I don't know how exciting that is, but it's work that has to be done. In the end, actually, NT, right, that like the result of that will be probably a fair number of people, especially if we do Gitcoin, grants protocol. There could be a significant amount of energy that surfaces around that. But that's not going to be energy that's like focused on TEC's internal activities, more like excitement about projects funding, which is what we should be doing. So, if you look at also like similarly our investments that we're going to be making, like our focus of our work, a lot of it focusing on the education area and supporting Academy, those are also kind of like behind the things that we're doing. They won't necessarily show up things that are happening on our servers. And so I think there are kind of two aspects the way I see it. One is we're field building is what we're doing. We are an entity that is here, and we need to define our success not based on whether we have a large Discord or large forum, but whether or not the work that we're catalyzing in the field is actually having an impact on the token engineering field. So I think that's a really important part of that. And I think that our job, the job of this team, is to do that as efficiently and effectively. And I see that as being more of a community organizing model, which in simple terms is basically you're not in a community organizing model. You have a small number of people who are actually paid to organize or help communities organize themselves more accurately. And you're really relying on the community to actually engage and find the incentives, the internal, like the intrinsic motivations wanting. So we're kind of like helping to organize, but also getting out of the way, not requiring them to do this work. So I think that's kind of like the picture of what we're trying to do. And so I'm just asking right now, like, but people are still people, and they're going to, like, as we are doing more of that kind of behind the scenes work, if you come to a Discord server and it looks totally dead, or come to a forum and it looks totally dead because people are doing all this stuff that's like showing up there, but it's showing up in other places, that's a problem. Then people don't get that excited. So I guess what I'm asking, what does this place need to look like as we're doing some of this work so that we can continue to build more for this work? What should it feel like when people come, when they look at our Twitter feed? What should it feel like when they come into our Discord server and onto our forum? Like what level of activity and what kind should they see in order to have faith that the commons is alive and thriving? And how do we do that without spending a whole bunch of resources to actually make it happen?
Yeah, I think that's the challenging part is are there incentives to participate? And I think kind of the maybe along the lines of Bear's work where we have these kind of opportunities to, um, people like Joseph and Marathon 9 coming in and having opportunities for them to plug in and contribute to the commons is something that is really interesting. And perhaps, connecting with Common Stack and seeing what kind of network they have in terms of people who are interested in the actual, development of commons, I think is a really cool opportunity for people to really plug in and say, hey, this is exactly, this is how you run a commons and this is what to expect. And here's an opportunity to gain some experience in a commons type of environment would be really interesting. So perhaps creating a closer partnership with Common Stack in terms of getting the human capital that are interested in this particular area of work to join in and learn and contribute in small ways would be a really interesting method for building that.
I also think that my comment sort of stands true. At the end of the day, it is all dead because we also don't have anything to offer. And so maybe something that you probably would like is Ethereum.org, Gideon. Maybe you can check that out later. Ethereum.org is is they call it the portal to Ethereum, and that's a small team of the Ethereum Foundation, and they have a really nice structure around it, and they publish um, quarterly roadmaps and epics and all of that, and they rely heavily on the community to both make post issues of things that have to be solved and also making pull requests so that those issues are solved, and they have a community of contributors that contribute to the roadmap. um, and so I guess that's it, right? That's the key, that it's having something people can actually plug in some way or fashion. For Ethereum.org is pretty straightforward because it's a web page, and so the code is on GitHub, everything's on GitHub. It's pretty clear, everyone can read it. Now the question is, what is that we are offering that people can plug in into, or where's even um, the interface or the roadmap that people can sort of jump into and know where they can can help, right? Um, and that's with the conversation we had on Notion, for example, or even go back to using GitHub, so that so that there's something more familiar for people to plug in and to find where things is going, and just very specific things where they can plug in, but also having in mind that those things have to be not only good for us, but also something they can get value out of. So, for example, again, Ethereum.org, they issue one POAP each year. So if you made contributions to the repository, you get one contribution POAP. And then what's nice about GitHub is that everything you do is recorded. And so if you were to look for jobs, you can say that you got code merged into Ethereum.org, which is nice.
Yeah. I will. Oh, go ahead. Osiris, do you have something you'd like to say?
Oh yeah, hey. This is my first time to came to here in this community call, but I feel like for the Discord, this problem, I feel like maybe we can cooperate with other kinds of projects. Maybe this may also help, as like some other kinds of like the public chain ecosystems. There are a lot of new projects in these kinds of new ecosystems like Aptos or like Optimism or like Aptron, and in these kind of new ecosystems there are a lot of new projects, and they may give the whitelist to others, to other communities, and maybe we can cooperate with them so that they also need some new kinds of tokenomics, and they may want us to help them. Also that when we help them, we may show our communities value, and also that they may know that if they want to have a better ecosystem, they can come to us. And for this part, I think like we can maybe show more professional articles on the Twitter or on others like on other media, so that we can show that we have the professional way to help them in ecosystem and in tech. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. And welcome to the community. This is your first call that you've come to?
Yeah, this is my first call.
Okay, that's great. Would you like to just take a couple minutes to just introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. I'm Aris, and maybe I'm new to crypto. In 2021, it's my first time to came to crypto world, and after that, I came to a crypto fund to do some investments, and maybe last month I came here when I was searching for an NFT project, maybe I think, and I see your Twitter, and I came to see this TEC community, and I joined. I feel like there maybe very little communities which are focused on tech or focused on tokenomics. So I'm really interested in this community, so I joined. Yeah.
That's great. Well, you're very welcome, and thanks for coming to the meeting. It's great to have you here. So I think so. I'm just going back and looking at some of these observations. I mean, if I were to summarize, it's like, yeah, I think what we're seeing is not so much like this sense that we're going to have like a lot of activity on this near term, but can we clean up what we've got right now, make it super simple and easy to understand? What is it that we're actually allowing people to do through? What is the service? What's the utility that's shining through here? I think the other, I think there's this other piece actually, like looking at the Ethereum.org. It's like basically, how do we kind of step back and create space for the field to come here and find things that are worthwhile? I guess like let's just jump into like enough of abstracts. Let's get into like I think that the key for us is finding the things. I'm a big believer, especially for DAOs, in automated self-service. So the reason that the curation service is really interesting is that anybody can come in and we can point people to that and they can serve themselves. There's not a lot of training that's required. They can just jump in and share stuff. And there are some issues right now with incentives for doing that. There's not a lot of incentives for that. And I think also, there are definitely issues, but I guess what I'm saying is, where are the places where there's just like natural energy that people can bring to the community themselves without having to have us do a lot of work around that. So, curation is definitely one. The shelling point. I guess that's a big question. Like, how much work is that going to be? How do we make that so that can like sprout and grow without requiring a whole bunch of a lot of labor intensive work on our part? Same thing with grant making. I think there's definitely models. Algovera has shown. I mean, there, ENS. There are plenty of examples of having a grant making program that doesn't require a huge amount of work from individuals. Yeah, so it's basically about like driving down the cost of it, allowing people to do the engagement themselves, and having some things that are truly valuable.
Mm. Sorry, I just want to go back a little bit with this, with what we were discussing before, and then try to tie it with this, because I was thinking that something that probably could help us figure this out is exactly what NT and Nate suggested, like looking at examples of other places and see what they're doing. I think the Ethereum.org, that's a really good example of a tangible thing of a website. And I think we are talking about creating the TEC and having some sort of platform to become the portal for token engineering, right? Not the portal for Ethereum, but the portal for token engineering. And then with Common Stack, looking at if we are defining this, that we are not an organization, but we are a commons, then how do commons are supposed to be structured, right? And if Common Stack is this is what they do, I think there could be a really strong synergy with them in them trying to guide us and tell us what kind of shape could that take. And I think it's really important because then I feel there will have to be some sort of narrative work that we would need to do in clarifying in our different mediums and in everything we do that we are not an organization, right? That we are a commons. And what is a commons? Well, this is a commons. I feel that right now it's, like Gideon, you mentioned it, right? It has taken us over a year to be able to make that transition of a mind shift from being an organization to a commons. So how can we facilitate that explanation, that narrative for newcomers and for anyone getting involved with the TEC, that they really understand what the TEC is doing and the way it's doing it through the form of being a commons, and everything that it's that relates with that. And I feel that this narrative, it also starts becoming some sort of the brand of the TEC. If people start looking at the TEC with this different like pair of eyes as just being a DAO or just being an organization, but more of a bigger entity, that has a whole economy running on its own. And I think it becomes more clear for people, hence easier for people to contribute with these different services and permissionless possibilities that we start delivering. But I feel that work in terms of the narrative and on the way we talk about and we tell the story of the TEC, I think it would be important to materialize in something like as that can be a like changing the description on our Twitter, writing an article and pinging it on our profile, like maybe doing some fixes on the website and creating a simple landing page that explains this, like having some sort of like activity that can encapsulate this. I think that'd be important and that could help us with this.
Yeah, that's great. How do we know basically the work that we're doing over this next, I think, this next season. Here's another way of asking the same question. Given what we know we're going to be working on, and assuming that these are value creating activities, like I can kind of go through these things. I can see the partnership Well, okay, let's start with the simplest one. Restoring our public goods funding and making that exciting. I can see how that is going to result in activity on our Discord server potentially, but definitely on our forum. I guess let me just say this. I think I'm beating around the bush. I'll say this in a pretty crass way, or like a very straightforward way. I think that as we do this next phase of our work, we need to design it in such a way that it actually leaves activity. It leaves markers that people who are coming to visit can look at and go like, oh, there's stuff happening, right? It's not just behind the scenes. So that, when you come in, you don't have what's happening today, right? Which is you go to our forum and it just feels totally dead. You go to our Discord, it feels pretty dead. So how do we design? Yeah, this is more of the question I'm asking. So that the work that we're doing that we need to be is showing up and creating some traction. And it doesn't need to be a lot, but it can't be just dead.
Yeah, I think making it more like finding an audience for, being a place to communicate, where it's not just like our forum is strictly centered around, TEC internal conversations or ideas and proposals, but more, like, hey, this is something that we have a section for, smart contract audits or whatever, I don't know, whatever it may be, but just reformatting it for different audiences. So having multiple opportunities for people to participate on our forum that aren't TEC related, but more token engineering related. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. Like, I think that we could do a lot of different things to make it more our communication channels more attractive to token engineers. But I'd have to think about how that's possible. So
I'll just say again that we just have to be patient. Like, the SPI, if we can have two or three groups, that's already two or three meetings happen weekly on the server. And for grants, essentially every organization that does sort of public grants makes some community calls or general calls where people with the grants can sort of pitch the grant further to the people voting and things like that. Like, we just have to be patient. Those things will appear, and so once we have the opportunity, we'll have, like, once we have made the work, the opportunity will come for those more community-ish activities to appear around those initiatives.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think the answer is someplace in, honestly. Like, I agree with you, Inti, that it's like that movie, The Field of Dreams. If you build it, come. Like, if we do create value, and I'm confident that we are now moving in a direction where we starting to build some real utility. So yes, we have to have faith that once that happens, people will start to show up. And I think that there are some small things that we need to in our design process. I guess this is what I'm getting at. Like, so Nate, your example is a really good one. What are the tweaks that we can make to the forum so that the majority of stuff that's going up there, so that there's one, with the grants that that generates a fair amount of activity on the forum, and it's not about our internal process. And two, like, are there ways for the SPI to like create little spaces in the forum. Do we want to do that? I don't know. But like, I guess what I'm suggesting is the artifacts of this next phase of work, we should be thinking about how that shows up as a signal of engagement. Like I guess that's the what I'm looking for here is, engagement signal is important. It matters. It matters to people's confidence and faith that this thing is becoming something again. So how do we design in all the things that we're doing? How do we so that it creates engagement signal and does it as cost effectively as possible?
Yeah. In terms of just ideas, I think that, showcasing other people's work is another option. I know that CAD and Token Spice communities, they pump out models all the time, and having a place maybe in the forum where we can say like, hey, here's the latest like updates and models, and maybe having some being more communicative about what's been going on in TEC is probably a solution to that. Maybe doesn't have to be in the form or anything, but it could be something that we approach from the perspective of like, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're talking to stakeholders more. I think we could engage more with the TE community than we currently do. I think Twitter is just a partial, it's kind of a makeshift solution, and not something that necessarily, I mean, we do Twitter, but like, outside of that, we don't do much in terms of engaging with others. I think we could probably do, we've had a newsletter on our minds for a long time, and, we really haven't found a way to do that effectively. But perhaps we can start thinking about engaging in communications, external communications a little bit more.
Yeah. It's the challenge is, well, I'm hoping personally to start freeing up cycles over the next couple months to focus more on the communicating the story, particularly as we start ramping. Okay, any other thoughts before we close? We got 2 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I mostly just kind of wanted to sow this seed so that each one of us, as we're thinking about the designs for the API, for the grant stuff, that the primary goal is not creating a whole big community. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's like, engagement signal is kind of an how do we create artifacts, right, that show engagement, that help to restore confidence and faith that this place is starting to turn around, building. And so it's a subtle thing, but I think it's keeping in mind. And also this affects the stuff that we're thinking about for engagement, how we build these, how like what is the next automated for people to plug in, beyond the curation service. And Nate, I think specifically, actually, this is kind of a big challenge for the AI, is thinking about that. How does that thing scale? How does that thing scale without having to add lots and lots of people to staff it?
Yeah, one of the big, I think we're really dealing with kind of a bootstrapping problem. it's one of those things where like I mentioned before, I'm looking around and like I think I can start like we've started compiling a list of all the different research and groups and potential interest groups that already exist within other communities, but getting them to start kind of get people to start their own within the TEC, for example, is another challenge. And so trying to figure out the incentives for people to say, hey, I want to start an interest group, for example. I'm a token engineer and I'd like to start an interest group and take this time to educate others is really kind of a hard incentive to create. But I do think that, like Inti said, if we're patient and we stick, keep going with it, I think we can bring a lot of attention to this Discord, our forum, everything else. And so it's really just about building up these kind of small wins over time, and in the aggregate, it really kind of builds a community around what we're trying to accomplish. But the incentive part is the hard part that I'm trying to figure out. And so if you guys have ideas around that, like I would love for you to mention them and contribute towards that, because that's something that I'm trying to solve right now.
Okay, I think that's great. I feel like this is a conversation. So let's we'll add that in. I think it's part of the kind of the whole like how do we scale the commons, and it's tied into reputation too, indirectly. So I'll add that to a topic for next week. All right, everybody, we are now 2 minutes. Stop here. Thanks everybody for your time, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, everyone.
See you.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Osiris.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Zero XRs. Hope to see you around. Oh, and Zero XRs. Tomorrow I will be hosting a